Now, workers at the South African unit of the Japanese carmaker Toyota down the tools on Monday, demanding a 20% pay hike, and that in effect signals the start of a nationwide strike in the car manufacturing sector in South Africa. The strike could affect, in theory, about 30,000 assembly line workers. It was called last week Thursday by the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, NUMSA. Now, South Africa's auto industry contributes at least 6% of the country's GDP, 12% of its entire exports. This stoppage, therefore, is likely to compound the woes of Africa's largest economy, especially if it scales up to that 30,000 figure, given the fact that unrest in the mining sector has slowed growth in the country already. Strikes also loom large in South Africa's mining sector. We have unions there seeking pay hikes ranging from 15% to 150%, despite the slump in metal prices right around the world. Right, let's move on to the Africa Rising narrative now. The continent needs quite the economic overhaul in order to prosper. That's according to the Deputy Governor of Nigeria's Central Bank, Dr. Kingsley Moghalu. He's been in Washington to launch a new book that argues that the continent's economies have a lot more work to do if they are to become global players. But the details, here's CCTV's Nina Maria Potts.
When people in Washington talk about Africa, there's been a tangible change in tone in recent years. The overwhelming narrative is upbeat about Africa's economic prospects, and President Barack Obama himself has been trying to reinforce that message.
This is a moment of great promise for Africa. The extraordinary talents of men and women all across this continent are being unleashed. Africa is rising, and in our global economy, more growth and opportunity in Africa means more growth and opportunity for everyone.
Not so fast, says the Deputy Governor of the Bank of Nigeria, who's been in Washington promoting his new book. He says that Africa needs a major economic facelift.
Africa contributes 3% of world trade. 3%. 5% of total global foreign direct investment is in Africa. And when you look at these two figures, they are both very small.
Dr. Moghalu says Africans need to understand the forces of globalization before they can benefit from capitalism. And to do that, they need to completely transform their economy.
What will give jobs to those teeming masses of youth in Africa, is what we have to be thinking about for Africa. We cannot look to the West and its post-industrial society as a model for us. We must first provide jobs for our people.
Asked which economic model works best, Dr. Moghalu says Africans need to follow their own destiny.
Both the Asian model and the Western model, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with those models. One model may be wrong from the perspective of one worldview, but that's precisely the point I'm making, that there is a clash of worldviews out there. And what's Africa's worldview?
Some analysts in Washington argue one reason Africa is doing so well is that its economy was somewhat insulated from the global financial meltdown. Other analysts say only now are US investors waking up to Africa's wealth of opportunities. Either way, says Dr. Moghalu, Africa is not yet rising, but it's not sinking either. It does, though, need to do a lot more work. Nina Maria Potts, CCTV in Washington.
Neither rising nor sinking. Let's move on the markets now. See what your money's been doing across equities in Africa. The Nigerian all-share index was down by just over a third in early morning trade. Pretty much the same story, really, in South Africa. The JSE was down by well over 0.2. The 20-share index in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, however, up by 0.63%. Some fairly interesting results for the half-year numbers coming through from Standard Group, and of course KCB has also seen some fairly interesting action on it. EGX 30 also in the green, up 0.36%, despite of course violence and the political turmoil that we've seen in the country over the last couple of days. Right, time for another break. Here's what's coming up in sports.